The night sky over Los Angeles was painted in silver streaks of light and dreams that never slept. In a city where ambition ran faster than time itself, Ryan Carter stood on the rooftop of his new apartment, looking down at the ocean of headlights below. The air smelled like money and success, things he had chased his whole life. He thought he finally had it all, a six-figure salary, a penthouse view, and a life wrapped in perfection. But deep down, in the silence between his heartbeats, there was an emptiness no amount of luxury could fill. If you believe in kindness, love, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness, because this story might just remind you of what truly matters in life. Ryan wasn't born into wealth. He grew up in a small town in Texas, in a broken-down house where rain leaked through the roof and the fridge was often empty. His father worked long shifts at a factory, and his mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. As a child, he used to sit by the window and imagine a world where he didn't have to worry about bills, where his clothes were new, and where people looked at him with admiration instead of pity. That dream became his fuel. He studied harder than anyone, worked longer hours than everyone else, and climbed the corporate ladder with a fire that could burn through steel. By the time he turned 29, Ryan had everything he once wished for. He drove a silver BMW, wore tailored suits, and lived in an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. His life looked perfect on the outside, but on the inside, it felt like a movie he was tired of watching. Every day blurred into the next, emails, meetings, parties filled with people who smiled but never truly cared. He had hundreds of contacts in his phone but no one he could call when loneliness crept in. Then one evening, as he left work, his world took a turn he never expected. The rain had started to fall, soaking the city streets. He noticed a girl sitting on the steps of a coffee shop, hugging her knees tightly, shivering under the awning. She wasn't dressed for the rain, her clothes were thin, her shoes worn out. There was a small suitcase beside her, and her face looked tired yet strangely calm. Something about her drew him in. Her name was Lila Bennett. She had come to Los Angeles chasing dreams of becoming an artist, but reality hadn't been kind. Her roommate had moved out suddenly, leaving her unable to pay rent. The art studio she worked at had closed down, and she had no one to turn to. Ryan could have walked away, he usually did when confronted with things that didn't fit into his polished world, but something in her eyes stopped him. They held a quiet strength, a kind of hope he hadn't seen in a long time. He offered to buy her dinner. She hesitated, but hunger eventually won. They sat in a small diner across the street, eating grilled cheese and soup while rain tapped softly on the glass. She talked about her love for painting, the way she saw beauty in everything, even in things most people ignored. He listened, really listened, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about work or status. He was just present. Over the next few weeks, they started meeting more often. Sometimes they'd walk through old art galleries, other times they'd just sit by the beach, talking until the sun dipped below the horizon. Ryan found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done sincerely in ages. Lila didn't care about money or appearances, she cared about moments, small and real. She painted sunsets on scraps of cardboard, drew sketches of strangers she met, and somehow made Ryan see life through a softer lens. But the closer he got to her, the more the world he had built began to crumble. His co-workers noticed he wasn't attending the high-profile parties anymore. His boss warned him about losing focus. Even his so-called friends mocked him for dating a girl who couldn't afford lunch. Ryan tried to brush it off, but their words stung. Deep down, he was still that poor boy from Texas, desperate for approval. And now, he stood between two worlds, one filled with success but no soul, and another filled with love but no certainty. One night, after a particularly stressful day at work, Ryan snapped. He met Lila at the park where they often sat together, but instead of his usual smile, his face was cold. He told her he couldn't do this anymore. He said he needed to focus on his career and couldn't get distracted. Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't beg. She simply nodded, wiped her tears, and whispered, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Ryan." Then she walked away, disappearing into the night. The next few weeks were a blur of success. Ryan landed a promotion, his salary increased, and he was featured in a business magazine as one of the top young executives to watch. But the higher he climbed, the emptier he felt. Every morning, he woke up in his luxury apartment with silence echoing through the walls. The coffee tasted bitter, the view looked dull, and even his reflection seemed like a stranger's. He had everything, except peace. One Sunday, while cleaning his living room, he found a small folded piece of paper tucked inside a book she had once borrowed. It was a sketch of him, sitting on that park bench, smiling at her. Below the sketch were the words, "You look happy when you forget the world." That simple line shattered him. He realized he had walked away from the one person who saw him for who he truly was. Without hesitation, he went searching for her. He visited the diner, the art galleries, and the park where they used to meet, but she was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks. Then one evening, as he was driving through downtown, he saw a small crowd gathered around a street corner. He parked and walked closer, and there she was. Lila was standing beside a wooden easel, painting on the sidewalk. Her hands were covered in colors, her face glowing under the streetlights. She was painting the city skyline, but not the glass towers or the fancy lights. Instead, she painted the people, the emotions, the stories hidden beneath the surface. Ryan stood frozen, watching her work, his heart heavy with regret and longing. When she finally looked up and saw him, she didn't say anything. She just smiled softly, as if she had been expecting him. He approached her slowly and apologized, not just for leaving, but for being afraid to choose what really mattered. Lila listened quietly, then said, "You were never meant to find happiness in things, Ryan. You were meant to find it in people." That night, he helped her pack up her paintings, and as they walked side by side, the city lights seemed a little warmer, a little kinder. Ryan didn't quit his job the next day, but he started living differently. He spent his weekends helping Lila organize community art classes for kids who couldn't afford lessons. He stopped chasing titles and started chasing purpose. Their lives weren't glamorous, sometimes they struggled, sometimes they argued, but they were real. Slowly, his expensive apartment became a home filled with laughter, colors, and the smell of paint. A year later, Lila's work was featured in a small local exhibition. As Ryan watched her stand proudly beside her paintings, tears welled up in his eyes. Not because she had finally found success, but because she had reminded him what success truly meant. It wasn't about the car, the clothes, or the skyline view, it was about love, honesty, and the courage to start again. Ryan once imagined a glamorous life. But in the end, he discovered that the most beautiful life isn't the one people admire, it's the one that fills your soul. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness, because sometimes, a single story can remind someone to love again. Sparkle's special request, comment below with one line, "I believe in simple love." If you think kindness still has the power to change lives. And as the screen fades to black, Ryan's voice echoes softly, "I used to chase the world. But it was love that found me."